What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Fish the Moment. In this video, I'm going to show you how I break down lakes in the spring using traditional electronics to find bass quickly. No forward-facing sonar in this video, so definitely stay tuned.
Today I'm out here on Table Rock Lake in Missouri. It's the end of March and water temperature is actually really warm. I see 58 degrees right now, which means the fish are going to be full pre-spawn, maybe even with some of the smallmouth on here on Table Rock getting ready to spawn. So we're going to take a look at this section of the lake. I just launched the boat. I haven't been to this area in about 2 years. So I want to show you how I break down a section of the lake I haven't been to in a long time during this pre-spawn time of the year and do kind of an uncut video to show you exactly what I'm looking for. Before we get into that though, I want to give you a huge shout out to the sponsor of all of the Fish the Moment long form content, and that's Bridgeford Foods. Bridgeford has been a great sponsor of bass fishing for a long time. They support a lot of professional anglers and YouTube content like this. They've been a great sponsor of the channel for years and make a great beef jerky that I always have on the lake with me because it's a great snack when I'm graphing around trying to find these fish. So definitely check out some Bridgeford beef jerky at your local dollar stores, gas stations, and Walmart checkout aisles. Good deal. Put that up. So let me show you kind of the area of the lake we're in right now. Table Rock is a massive lake. I have a bunch of waypoints on here that I downloaded from the Game and Fish. You can actually go on the website, on their website, and look up Table Rock fish attractors, GPX points, and you can get all of these waypoints and download them on the Fish Finder. These are all man-made areas, so that's kind of cool. And on Table Rock, on the lower end, there's a lot of creeks and bigger creek arms that can be kind of intimidating because this lake is so large. And when I'm trying to get out to a lake I haven't been to in a long time, I actually like to stay away from these larger creeks and larger areas because they take a lot longer to break down. If I was fishing Table Rock day in, day out and I had a good sense of what the fish were doing, maybe going to these bigger sections and bigger creeks would be a good idea. But because I haven't been here in a long time and I don't fish here that often, I came to a section of the lake where we still have the main lake right here, but we have a lot of smaller pockets and coves. These areas that have smaller pockets and cuts and coves are going to be easier to break down because there's not as much water that those fish can actually set up in. They're either going to be out here more towards the main lake, in the mouths of the creeks, or back in the creeks ready to spawn. So we should be able to break these areas down a lot quicker than you would with your fish finder and things like that without having to go through a 2 or 3 mile stretch of a creek or trying to get back in even some of these bigger creek arms here. We can focus on these smaller arms right here, here, and here, as well as these arms here, and probably get on some really good fish. Now, what I'm gonna do is basically roll through here and pick this first creek that's just right around the corner, as long as there's not a boat there, and start graphing through this and see where the fish are setting up, where the bait fish are setting up, and all those things. So let's run over to that first creek really quick and try to put some fish in the boat. Okay, so there was already a boat in this first creek here, so I just went up to the next little pocket and smaller cove. And these fish are definitely gonna be using these pockets to spawn in at some point here in the next few weeks. So ideally, we're gonna be looking for fish that are staging on these main points here and maybe just rolling into the sides of these creeks. A lot of these points are gonna be flatter pea gravel points, and we'll pull up our fish finder view here just to kind of see our 2D sonar as well as our side scan and mapping. And the idea I have whenever I'm getting out on any of these points is I want to find two things. One, I want to see if we can find any bait fish activity, whether that's shad or big threadfin, gizzard shad, stuff like that, that'll let us know what depth the fish might be in if they're in that pre-spawn mode. In addition, I want to look for isolated pieces of cover, whether that's a brush pile or a rock pile that these fish can be staging on as well, anywhere from that, let's say, 10 to 25 feet of water range, and then graph them to see if we can see fish setting up in those. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky with these smallmouth on Table Rock because they'll sit so tight to the bottom that you can hardly see them on side scan or 2D, but usually you can pick out a couple of them if you're looking at the right stuff. But we got a boat ramp coming up on our right side here, got some rock, got a nice decent amount of cover, but I'm not seeing anything that really jumps off the screen. I'm kind of hoping we would see something on this little boat ramp here, but it looks like we don't see anything on there from what I can tell. And I'm not seeing any real bait fish activity or anything in particular right off the bat here. And this first creek we might be pulling into might not have them, and that's perfectly normal. I'm not expecting to find them right off the bat. One thing about this creek that I am a little bit less excited about is that it's on the opposite side of the main river channel, and so there's probably less likely to be big groups of shad through this area. We're probably dealing with more crawfish versus a creek like this creek here or here that is closer to that main channel, especially this creek here that's right off that main channel. That's going to be a potentially a lot better creek for us to find bait fish or shad. So we're kind of making our way through here. There's a little bit of standing timber off this. There's a nice little rock transition bank here. Some stuff that we could potentially fish if we want to just fish down the bank, which is something we might end up doing depending on how the conditions are. But I really would like to find some fish that are staged off these points just a little bit, even though the water temperatures are warming, because usually you can find a spot where you can catch more than one fish in an area, which is really what we're kind of looking for. There's a bunch of rock and different things through here, though it's hard to kind of tell if we're looking at bass or fish. I don't really see anything in particular that jumps off the screen that lets me know that we're dealing with any fish in this area. So gonna keep rolling and just kind of keep graphing around. We're gonna make our way now into this little pocket, following the shore, keeping our boat in that 15-ish foot of water range. And I wanna keep that 2D sonar up because the 2D sonar is what really helps you differentiate the fish from rocks and things like that in this situation. We're also coming up on a little bit of standing timber that I can see just sticking out of the water here. So there might be some fish setting up in some of the standing timber, kind of suspended with these bluebird skies, calm conditions. We might be able to toss a swim bait through some of this stuff if we can see some fish in these trees. Or we may need to keep rolling and go to those creeks like we talked about that were closer to the main channel. It sometimes takes me 20, 30 minutes to kind of get a sense for what these fish are doing. So it's not always a deal where I'm gonna be able to figure it out within 5 minutes getting to the lake. Looks like there is a fish on this tree right here. In that tree right there, we can see a dot right there, and we can see it on that. So I'm gonna mark that real quick, not try to run into there we go. Not try to run into anything. Let's get back out of here. I wanna see if there's more fish in these trees because we did see some. Let me pull this back up. There's one fish there. It was only one fish in that one tree though, which isn't always, that big of a deal. Sometimes you only find like an individual tree. Though we're not using forward-facing sonar today, so it's going to be tricky to target those fish in those trees when there's just one fish in a tree in like a whole stretch. So I'm not gonna worry about that too much. It is good to know that there might be some fish though setting up in those trees. If we find a group of trees that has more fish in like a small stretch, maybe that's a deal where we can just fan cast a swim bait through there and crack them. I wanted to look out a little bit deeper here really fast just to see if there's any fish setting deeper in these trees, though it doesn't look like that's the case. And we'll switch back over to our 2D. I keep pulling up the down scan view. We're gonna work a little bit further in this pocket because there's more timber down these banks, and I have a feeling since we saw one fish setting up in that piece of standing timber there might be more down this stretch. And if we maybe find a zone where a bigger wad of fish have moved into this deal, we might be able to just, again, fan cast down these banks, put our boat off the swim bait, fire out, and just kind of work through this area and catch some fish. But I want to find an area that has enough fish to be able to do that. We need to see, a decent quantity of them, not just one fish here, one fish there. Nice little rocky stretch here. This is a kind of a deal I would throw a jerkbait on a lot, as these fish are kind of transitioning in, but I feel like it's getting pretty warm and that jerkbait bite might not even be the best right now. Let's see what that was. Not fish, just a bunch of timber and stuff. And this looks decent, but I'm not seeing like a large concentration of anything, not seeing any shad or anything like that. So we're gonna spin back around and we're gonna work the other side of this creek out. And this is gonna give us a good sense of if these fish are gonna be on, again, timber, whether they're gonna be further back in these creeks or they're gonna be more towards the mouth of the creek. And it's also gonna let us know if we need to be, again, on the side where the main river channel is running against that side of the lake, or if we need to be on this opposite side of the lake. And right now it looks like we aren't really seeing a ton of activity. And that's why I like to graph around for minimum 20 or 30 minutes before I start fishing, even if I'm gonna start fishing down the bank here, because if we go through this area and we don't see a ton of fish suspended out deeper, we don't see a lot of shad or really anything going on, that might mean that we can just roll down the banks here and just throw you know, a crankbait or a swing head or something just down the bank and find some fish as well, especially on some of these more rounded points like what we're coming up to here. If we can find a nice isolated rock pile, those fish might be there feeding on crawfish or just getting staged up to spawn. So there's a really good chance that we're gonna find something here off this point up here, and if not, then we'll keep rolling. But this is the process I kind of go through, and you're just trying to establish one little deal, one clue that's going to clue you in on what you need to be doing, whether it's, again, fishing timber, fishing the bank, fishing further off these points. And if I go through, let's say, for 45 minutes or something, and I don't see any fish out here offshore very well, that means I need to be heading to the bank, and that's kind of the indicator there. But instead of just starting on the bank and maybe spending 45 minutes not catching them, it's better to know if they're deep, if they're shallow, and kind of get yourself in a situation where you can explore it all. So that's kind of the idea here, but I need to switch back over. I keep putting my down scan on as I'm talking. Let's put this 2D, and let's just see if we can see anything off this point. There's a waypoint up here. It's a game and fish waypoint. I don't know if that's a brush pile or a piece of, or some rock or something. I don't really know. They don't have them marked super well, so, or at least when you transfer them to your graph, you can't really tell. But we'll go look at that real quick just to see. I'm not seeing anything that really just jumps off the screen right this second, but I do see something right there. What is that? There's some shad, or there's something right here, actually on that side scan view. It's really hard to see it. What are those? Those might be shad. So if we take a look at the side scan, you can see right here, I'm gonna regraph this. This is maybe what we've been kind of looking for, is you have right in here, you have some shad, it looks like. I'm gonna mark this with a shad icon, which is a good sign, because it's a good sign for two reasons. One, we can see what depth these fish might be in from the position of those shads. Those shad are in 16 feet of water, so that gives us at least an idea that maybe we need to be looking for fish in that 16 foot of water range, 15 foot, somewhere in that zone, which is a really good piece of, or a good clue for us. And also, if we graph over the top of these shad, maybe there's some bass that are actually just up there feeding on them, and we can go fire a swim bait or fire something on them. So let's kind of get back over here. We don't have to worry about graphing super deep potentially too, which is nice. If they are up in that 15 foot of water zone, that would be pretty convenient today, not having to fish so deep. Let's head over right over the top of this just to see what we're dealing with. Those shad have moved, or what's going on right here. I mean, we're not seeing them now. So obviously these shad are on the move. They're kind of roaming around, but we got a good idea of the depth they're in. I'm not seeing anything that jumps off the screen in terms of fish off this exact point, even though they're shad here. So if I was seeing a bunch of fish on this point, maybe I would stop and make a couple casts, but there's that shad again. It's pushed a tiny bit deeper. We can see it on the side scan view right here. So that shad is on this point, just kind of roaming around. So that's a good sign. So 15 foot of water, 20 foot of water, somewhere in there. Let's keep rolling and keep in this depth zone then. So I'm gonna keep my boat right in this, like, you know, between 15 and 20 foot. And I wanna see if I can find anything that really jumps off the screen. We have those shad marked, so if we do find that the fish are on all the points with shad, we might just come back and just fan cast this point, throw a swing head or a swim bait, and just maybe get on some fish just because, you know, they're close to those shad. Maybe they're sitting tight to the bottom, but for now we'll look for something just a little bit more obvious. There's that brush pile right there. So that is a game and fish brush pile. Let's see if there's anybody home. There's a rough fish off to the right in here. That is a non-bass. Not seeing any bass in particular. It isn't a good depth zone, but I'm not seeing any bass particularly. There's a little more brush off to the side even. There's another brush pile just off here. There's a bunch of brush in this area, so let me mark this brush pile too here, just to have that. Interesting. Nothing super crazy right this minute. Oh, there we go. There's a fish or two right there off that rock. Okay, so this is kind of what we've been looking for. This is, we got one, we kind of got one that showed itself right here, right in that 15 foot zone. This is exactly what I wanted to see. So if I pull up the 2D sonar view, you can see that fish is right here. That's a fish right there. It's really hard to tell on the 2D sonar, but if we go back to our down scan, you can see that there's some separation between that rock, the bottom, and that dot. So that's 100% a fish right there. So we're gonna mark that. We're gonna go back around, and we're gonna re-graph over that area. So caught one of you guys out, which is good. I don't know if there's gonna be a lot more there or just like that might be one of the few fish. I highly doubt that there's just one there. It's right in the depth zone that we saw him on the other point, which is 15 foot. And there's some brush around in here. We saw that fish very clear, which is good. There's a bunch of stuff right here too. This looks kind of good. See if we can graph over the top of these and just see if there's more going on here. We saw one fish. I want to see if we can see 3 or 4. It's hard to tell if there's more fish out to the right or left to this point just because of all of the debris, though I really like all that rock you see to the right of the boat on that side scan. All that rock looks super good. I'm not seeing anything that, you know, screams that there's fish in that stuff, but we're getting a sense. 15 foot of water, secondary points. It's not a bad clue. You didn't see anything that second pass. That fish dropped back down to the bottom. But on that side scan, we can see that really nice rock right there. So we're gonna mark this with rock. I wanna mark over the top of that real quick, just to see. Drive over the top of this. And I wanna go to this other side of this point and see if we see fish, because what might happen is that we may not be able to catch them like in big groups, but if there's a few fish here, a few fish there scattered on some of this deal, we might be in business. I want to get over top of this rock pile just to see if there's anything. There's a little bit of brush here too, now that we're looking at that. So there's a little bit of brush. We seen anybody home? Really hard to tell. Okay, so let's keep rolling. So the secondary point had some, has a fish. I wouldn't say it has some, it has a fish. There's maybe another fish potentially right here, maybe. So these fish are so tight to the bottom, it's kind of hard to tell, but let's go to this next point over here across the way. It's similar-ish in look, not exactly the same, but I want to see if there's anything here. And then what we might do is just start fishing that really quick and just make a handful of casts. I don't expect to catch anything crazy off that spot. I don't see a ton of them there, but if we can at least get one bite, it'll help us start establishing a pattern, and then we can start running that pattern throughout the section of the lake here and start getting on something. I kind of wish we saw more than one fish. A lot of times when I find good spots out here on Table Rock, I'll see 5 or 6 fish, but even just one fish a lot of times is enough to let me know that I can get a bite or two, which is good. Let's work our way up to this point and just see if it's repeatable. There's a brush pile here, it looks like, or something here off this point. This is definitely a steeper point, so it's going to be a good test to see if these fish might be on some of the steeper stuff too. And then there's a brush pile. Anybody home? These fish are really not using these brush piles. There might be a fish in there, but it's kind of hard to tell, so I'm not super excited about that. But let's get around this corner, and we're gonna get to the flatter section out here, stay in that 15-foot zone, see if there's anybody over here we might be able to catch out. And if not, we at least have one spot to check out to start, which is a really good starting point. Let's see here. So I'm not seeing anything in particular that's that good. I'm saying I want to start, there's maybe a fish right there off this point, but it's really hard to tell. Before I start rolling through here, I want to go check I'm not seeing enough. Like, I saw a fish or two. I don't think that that's enough, guys, for me to really like want to stop and fish there. If it fit the pattern, I might come back and start fishing it again. But I want to check these points over here because these are closer to the channel, and I might have a bigger group of fish that are setting up on some of these points in here, even this first point off the main channel here. And then we also have some points that are really close to the channel. I know I can find something better than that. So sometimes that's a really big trick with, fishing offshore, is you have to know when to not fish for the few fish, spend the extra time, keep graphing, and find more fish. I know I'm able to get a bite there, but it's just probably not worth the time that I'm gonna spend on it. I think it's better to head to these other points. So let's just run over here real quick. Okay, so these points are a lot closer to this main river channel, so in all likelihood you're gonna have a bigger fish population on these just because they're closer to that main channel. You're also gonna have potentially more shad. Oh, there's some fish literally right there. We just drove over the top of them. Look at that, guys. An absolute wad of them. These are not big fish, but these are just little spotted bass. But I see even more on the side scan. This is why we run around and look for new stuff right off this channel. When we pull up side scan, you can see them off this drop here, right here, all in here. You can see the shadows of those fish. Those are the fish, but there's even more of them set up right here. Let me mark that. Okay, get back out of here. Sorry guys, I'm like freaking out. Found something already. So this is why we run around and don't just get caught up on one deal. Now, those fish were suspended over the channel, which without forward-facing sonar is gonna make it more difficult to focus if we wanted to target those fish that are suspended out there. But if we can find some fish that are setting up tighter at the bottom, then we'll have no problem catching them. So that's gonna be the goal. These fish were a little bit deeper, it looks like. I just wanna see if there's any that are setting up actually on the bottom or on this little drop off that might be catchable. They could just be a random wad that was swimming through here too, just some spotted bass that are cruising. But I like the fact already that we're seeing more fish, which is a really good sign. So I am not discouraged by any means by this. We just might need to find a group that's setting up on the bottom somewhere over here rather than randomly swimming. Yeah, those fish were just kind of random roamers. So that's another reason why I re-graph areas multiple times, guys, before I just start dropping the trolling motor and start fishing. Because if those fish had been set up in a specific spot, we might have been able to see them again when we regraph the area, but that is not the case. So I'm gonna keep rolling for a minute. And I'm just trying to see if we see any fish. I kind of want to stay in that like 15-foot-ish zone. There's a lot of just debris and a nice drop off out there in the channel. This could be a really good summer spot even, where that channel drops really sharp. But these fish should be moving off of that stuff. That's more of a winter type spot than a pre-spawn. Is that some fish right there? Ooh, what do we got going on right here? This might be something interesting. Okay, let me pull this up on side scan. So we have this nice channel drop right here, and it looks like there might be a fish or two right here, maybe. There's some shad. That's gonna be rock too. I'm just gonna mark this as rock for now, and there's some nice rock here, and hope that maybe, just maybe, what's going on? Uh-oh, what happened? Get back. Here we go. Okay. Maybe this rock has some fish on it. This is pretty far out to the channel though, so I'm not 100% sold that this is gonna be where these fish are setting up, but this is deep, 30 foot. No, this is just rock. Okay, that's good to know. So these fish are not this deep, so we need to keep up in that 15-foot zone. We need to find a flatter part of this point probably than this really steep section. There are fish out here roaming and stuff like that. It's just, they're really tough to catch when they're just roaming around out there with traditional methods. So we're looking for the fish that are set up on the bottom. And I know there are fish on the bottom somewhere, and there they are right there. Is that a group of bass? I don't know if those are bass or not. Those are really tight packed together. Those are not bass. So what those are probably crappie. You can see how much they're stacked together. The only thing that could be is that they're a group of spotted bass, like small spotted bass. The arches have enough color in them to be bass. They might just be a group of spots that are super, super stacked together. But let me just roll around real quick and just see. We're seeing so much more fish activity though as we got closer to this main channel side, as you can see. So I can barely grab like 5 feet without seeing something interesting. Is there a fish there? No. Let's graph over that again. Those fish were stacked so tight together, those don't look like bass. But sometimes spotted bass can fool you on table rock because they will group up a little bit tighter together when they're really grouped up. But that could also be that same school that we graphed further out that was definitely bass. So if we graph over this again and they're gone, that just means that they're a random wad roaming. But yeah, those are not bass. I don't know what those are. Those could be bigger gizzards though, or something. I like the fact that they're right on that drop and there's some rock right there. That's some type of forage. I don't think those are bass. There's more pushed down the side of this too on the side scan. There's a bunch of stuff just spread. These actually could be bass spread out more here. You can see these dots are more spread apart. So that could be what I'm marking here are not bass, but I think there might be bass in this general zone feeding on those, because it looks like there is some shad. There's also some shad popping on that 2D right there, or sorry, on down scan right there. Okay, there's some stuff going on in here. Here's more fish right here. Wow, this point is loaded up. What are these? These are just random fish they're roaming. There's a bunch of stuff happening on this point. There's gotta be some bass on this point. With as much life as happening here, there's some random bait and just things, like there's something happening out here. We just have to find where the bass are setting up. They might already be just back there where we marked that, just sitting tight to the bottom, feeding on whatever that smaller forage is. If we can find a rocky spot up here, shallower off the tip of this point, this could also hold some fish if they wanted to set up out here. Let's just see. Roll around here. The reason I'm not stopping on those, because I'm not 100% sure that I can catch fish off of that last spot either. So I like to be 100% certain when I pull up on the spot. But a lot of times you'll roll through this stuff and you start getting a pattern. It's like, okay, secondary points, 15 foot of water, and you start catching them. So it's good to have these spots marked, because I can now run all these again after I find a spot where I'm like, okay, I can feel pretty much guaranteed I'm gonna catch one. There's some nice stuff right there. Are those bass? What are those? There's some right in here. Those look like those could be bass too. There's a lot of stuff going on at this point. Okay, so I actually graphed a few more points and didn't see any activity on them. And this point I'm on here is the one that was right off that main channel where we saw some spotted bass, we saw a bunch of shad, all kinds of activity on this deal. And I just feel like this point has a lot of potential. It's in the mouth of a creek. It has some nice flatter water on it, some deeper water close by. So what I'm gonna do is basically fan cast this area, trying to focus on where we have the waypoints I marked, but also fishing a little bit shallower to kind of just get a sense for where these fish might be setting up. I didn't really see big schools of fish out here, and so because of that, these fish might be spread out all the way up to the bank up here, and they may be all the way out to 25, 30 feet of water. So what I'll do is just kind of slowly work my way through here. You can see on my mapping kind of how I'm staying pretty good ways off the bank, maybe a full cast length or so off the bank. And what I'm working right now is just a swing head. So a swing head is a great tool on these kind of calmer days, bluebird skies. It allows you to cover water quickly, and you can just reel that bait in at a good clip. This is a 3/4 ounce swing head, so I can work it back to the boat pretty well without wasting a lot of time, but it just has a small little menace grub on the back, which these fish will eat really well. So it allows me to get a lot of bites, cover water, and as soon as I feel like I'm around something good, I can maybe pick up a different bait that might be a little bit better at actually catching the fish, like a swim bait or a Ned rig or something else. But I'll use this as at least my search tool for now. I might also pick up a swim bait on a couple of these areas where we actually had fish marked, because these fish might prefer a swim bait over a swing head. But there's a bunch of rock up on this point here, and I'm just gonna make a bunch of fan casts through here. It feels really good, this rock, but you just never know whether these fish are gonna be shallower or deeper. I'm just kind of playing it by ear. Fire that thing out there. I like to try and make really long casts with this deal and just fan cast these zones. I am lined up now, at least on those couple of waypoints we made, so I will bomb a cast out there as well. But in the pre-spawn, you just never know exactly where these fish are unless you have forward facing, which we don't. We just have my old Elite FS and mapping, and so we're just rolling around, and we're gonna have to kind of just scout these fish out. And this is the way I love to fish. We know, at least in general, where some of the key spots are going to be. So we have some of the key rock piles, as well as some areas where we saw some fish activity. So got them. There we go. Right off the bat here, guys. That did not take long. That's a good one too, good smallie. There we go, guys. That's what I'm freaking talking about. That's how we do it right there. That is a good smallmouth on the swing head. That is a nice keeper. Who needs forward-facing sonar? You just graph them up. It's not even on the waypoint we made, but we know that these fish are in this area by process of elimination. This is what I love about fishing, guys. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna get a picture of this fish real quick. Beautiful smallmouth. Let's freaking go. Beautiful fish right there. Let's get him back down in the lake. That is awesome. Got that fish on a staple for myself, at least, in the pre-spawn, which is a swing head. This is a Strike King Menace grub. I have to put a new one on here on a Big Bite Baits 3/4 ounce swing head. It's a smaller hook version. It's a 3/0 hook. I'm gonna get another Menace out of here. The box is kind of a mess with baits, so let's make sure I actually have a couple of them. Actually, I don't know. I might be running low on my Menace grubs. I might have to put something else on here. I'll just pull this out. This is the Crush City. I think it's called the Cleanup Craw. It's basically a Menace grub, but there we go right there. I'll show you how I rigged this up here. So, got that swing head, and all you do with a swing head is just Texas rig it. So, tear the appendages apart. I'm just going to put that hook through. I like to go only a short distance because you want to allow that swing head to actually swing free. You don't want the plastic to ride up on the actual swivel part or the little bracket there. And then you just Texas rig it. And I like to put my hook all the way through and Texpose it rather than burying my hook, because these fish are biting it kind of a little bit more aggressively. So you want to make sure that you have a good semi-exposed hook. And I spot locked here. And so now I'm just going to spot lock and fan cast this area right where I know I'm kind of in the area of fish. And actually, if we take a look at the graph, sorry, I'm excited, guys. If we take a look at the graph, we're right where we marked those fish, except for instead of casting out those waypoints, I was casting a little bit further to the right, but it's almost exactly where I marked those fish. In terms of like the general area of the point, it was just a little bit shallower. So we have at least a good idea that there's fish in the area. Those are actually fish, I believe, that I don't think those fish. I believe I marked on side scan, and I just saw them on side scan versus seeing them on 2D and down, but I kind of forgot. So you'll know in the video what those fish look like, but we obviously marked it as fish because we thought that there were fish here. So that is a really good sign. And there's probably not going to be a ton of fish on these points, guys, to be honest. It's probably just going to be a lot of like one fish here, one fish there type of deal. But what I'm going to do now that I know there's fish in this area is I'm going to be bombing my cast out there, and I'm going to fan cast this pretty thoroughly with this bait. And I'm also going to pick up a swim bait here in a second as well, and just give them a couple different presentations, because we know there's some good fish here now from that one smallmouth. But just slowly wind that swing head in. I'm trying to just wind that thing pretty slow just to maintain bottom contact. You don't want to necessarily like rocket this thing in, but at the same time you're fishing it fast enough that you can cover water. I'm using a 7-to-1 gear ratio reel. This is actually a new reel that I got from the guys over at Baits. It's the Baits Hundo. They gave one to me at the Bassmaster Classic, and it's basically the nicest fishing reel I've owned in like 10 years. So it casts really well. It's actually the first fish I ever caught on it, the first time I've ever thrown it, and it feels great. It's weird having like a $300 fishing reel when normally I'm using $50 Black Maxes, and I still have a lot of $50 Black Maxes, so I'm not going to go all the $300 reels, but it was really great of these guys to give me one of these, so I wanted to try it out and tell you guys about it at least. The Baits Hundo, they have them on Tackle Warehouse, and they're really well made. I will do more in-depth reviews probably on this reel and other reels I'm picking up, because all my reels are failing me right now. Everything, all my equipment is messing up right now from my old boat and old reels, so trying to get a little bit upgraded on some of my stuff just to make sure we don't lose any fish. I've been losing fish because my reels keep messing up on me, so I appreciate this reel because it didn't mess up on me on that fish catch at least, so that is good. But I'm gonna keep firing this thing out there, and I'm just kind of fan casting now around this point. One thing I did do is I positioned my boat. I didn't really talk about this, but I came in from the channel side, and I'm actually positioning my boat so that I'm casting uphill. So I'm bringing my bait actually uphill. It helps for better bottom contact with both the swing head and the swim bait. So you can see my boat is in shallower water. I'm casting at those waypoints right now, which are in deeper water. And when I'm reeling that bait in, I'm now making bottom contact the whole time, as opposed to if I had my boat positioned deeper and was casting the other way, I would have to slow my retrieve down to keep my bait in contact with the bottom. So that's a little trick that is great, especially in the pre-spawn, because those fish are wanting to move shallower versus deeper. And so positioning your boat shallower and casting deep will help you cover water a lot more efficiently, keep your bait in the strike zone better, things like that. So just a little trick there. I'm gonna bomb one more cast across this point with the swing head, and then we're gonna pick up that swim bait and bomb it out there, because a swim bait can be a really effective tool, especially when those fish are really keyed in on small shad. They'll eat that better than the swing head at times, but I mean, that's small, you freaking crack the swing head. And I think there might be potentially more fish down this stretch if we keep rolling around it, but I want to cover this area pretty thoroughly. Just see if there's more. A lot of times I don't get a lot of bites off each point when I'm fishing out here, but I get enough on each point, maybe 1 to 2, and then you just run a lot of points and you can catch quite a few fish in the day as a result. So I'm not really that concerned if I don't get a bunch of bites here back to back to back. I'm going to make several casts to keep them honest, but then move on relatively quickly. So we're gonna put this up for a second, the swing head. Pick that swim bait up. I just got a little Mega Bass 3-inch spark shad, and this is actually a new Picasso jig head. I'll show it to you if I catch a couple fish on it. I have to change out baits, but it's got a unique bait keeper, and it's a 3/8 ounce tungsten ball head, which is great when I'm trying to fish a little bit deeper out here. A lot of these fish I'm trying to cast at are in 20 foot of water, and so in 20 foot of water, it's actually tough to fish a little swim bait like this without raising that bait up too much as you reel it in. So I'm throwing this 3/8 ounce head just to see if that will help me keep it down there better. With the swim bait, casting it out now right where we saw these waypoints, these fish. I caught that fish, actually now that I can see, I caught that fish pretty far away from these waypoints. So he was further up on this point than what I'm fishing here, but I do want to keep him honest on this, on these exact waypoints, just because we marked fish here. And then we'll keep working around this point, but that fish was definitely shallower. Come on, hung up here on the swim bait. That's the one tricky part with the swim bait. If you do get it down in those rocks, it can sometimes get hung up, but you just pop your rod like that and it'll pop free. Not that big of a deal. Most of the time you'll get it back pretty easily without a lot of fuss. So fire that thing back out there. Lined up, as you can see, right on those waypoints. That's that waypoint method that I've taught for years, which is get your waypoints, then you set your range rings on your fish finder and your heading arrow, and that will allow you to get lined up. I also have a heading sensor on my boat right now, which allows my boat to stay pointed in the right direction, and it just is a great little setup here for getting lined up on these fish. But wind that thing in nice and slow. You can see I'm really keeping that bait slow. I'll tilt this camera down a little bit more for you guys so you can see that. So I'm really reeling that bait in slow just to maintain that bottom contact. It's only a 3/8 ounce head. I'm fishing it deep, so you have to work that thing slow. And that's why I don't throw the swim bait as my primary offering most of the time when I'm looking for fish. I instead like to throw the swing head because I can just fish it a lot faster, cover more water, and I get about the same amount of bites. But when I do catch one, I'll pick up the swim bait then and try to really kind of soak that area. And usually you can get 1 or 2 extra bites, but that is maybe not the case right now. We'll see. And then if not, we're gonna roll back on that swing head game, see if that works, because we got more fish that we marked. And I'm kind of interested, after we fish this point, to see if we can now replicate this on another point that is running up to the channel, because we only graphed, this is the only point that we graphed that was actually touching the channel. I graphed those first few points you saw me graph, and then I probably cut out the other points that I graphed further over here that had nothing on it. So the only point that had fish on it was that one right by the channel. So that is a really good insight in terms of figuring out why one of the points is better than the other. And bomb that thing out there. Just saw a fish bust over here. Don't know what it was on this point here though. Hoping I can get at least, I don't know, a couple more bites. I'm actually going to position my boat back a little bit closer to the shore here as I work down this, because I kind of get out here a little bit deeper just to kind of get my cast right on this deal, on those waypoints. But I'm going to bring my boat back over. As you can see, there's a little bit of a high spot on the graph, and I'm bringing my bait still uphill, and I want to move the boat so that I'm still making that same cast uphill rather than trying to cast even parallel. I want to be bringing it up that slope. So reposition the boat just a little bit, nothing crazy, but get my boat, my nose pointed a little bit more towards the shore. There's more fish on this point, guaranteed. I'm just not getting my bait in front of every single one of them. But we also didn't see a pile of fish on this point. We saw a few fish, and that's why I didn't stop here immediately and just start casting, but it's the best thing I'd found. And sometimes when you graph for 45 minutes or whatever, you can't just say, okay, I'm gonna wait until I find the mother load, because maybe that's just not what you want to do on that day. So instead, it may be better to just find what you can find, pick the best spot you have in that moment, and put a few fish in the boat. And that's kind of what we did. So I'm gonna make this last cast here. I saw there's a few fish busting and popping here. I might just have the wrong bait on too to get these fish in the boat, but they're eating a swing head, and that's the most efficient way I know to get these fish in the boat, as opposed to throwing anything else in these conditions. So what I want to do is get out of here, and I want to run and check a couple more of these points that are against this channel. So let's go graph those real quick, see if we can duplicate this pattern. And even if we can catch one or two more fish kind of replicating this pattern, we'll know that we can keep doing that. And I think that'll be a good enough lesson for today. So let's put these rods up, strap them up, and let's head over, see if we can find another point. Okay, so here's a point that is now on the main channel side of the lake, just like our last point. The thing about this point that we just fished is it was a very flat, rounded point where there's a lot of room for these fish to spread out. This point I'm graphing now is a lot steeper, but there is a flat spot up there, and I'm hoping that this will actually congregate the fish a little bit better rather than spreading them out over a long distance. Maybe they're just gonna set up on one little key spot, which could help us dial in our casts a little bit better. We can actually see a few fish off this point right here from what it looks like. It's kind of hard to tell. Maybe those are just rocks too. Kind of looks like there's some fish though sitting up in the shadow of that side scan view. Spin back around real quick. Looks like right in here you can see a few dots. It's hard to tell, but it looks like there might be a fish there. Looks like these could be fish. Let's just see. This would kind of make sense that they're setting up on this channel edge. I'm just hoping that we can actually see them like consistent, because if they're actually set up on that edge, these are perfect fish for a swim bait. Just want to see if they're actually down there or if it's just kind of random. It could just be the peaks of some rocks too, like it could be a bunch of stuff, but see if we see any now that we've regraphed over this. I mean, it looked okay. I didn't really see much anything. It didn't look great. Okay, so that's not really happening. That point's maybe a little bit too steep. So let's try to find another point that's, this point's less steep on the other side. Let's go check this one real quick. Okay, so this point's gonna be a little bit less steep, and then we have another one over here that looks a little bit less steep as well over here, and then we have this point, which is another rounded point that's closer to a channel. So we have a few spots to potentially check, but let's check this point, because this one looks kind of nice in the fact that it has one, a boat ramp off the end of it, which is kind of nice, and two, It is definitely flatter than the other point. Oh, is that a fish? Yeah, we see a fish right there, 15 foot. It's hard to see, but you can see it. We called him out right there. That's a fish right there. You can see him right there on 2D, down. We're gonna mark that fish. Okay, let's get back over here. I wanna regraph this real quick. I love the fact there's a boat ramp off the end of this too, kind of gives us more cover to check out. And this is a nice kind of, it's a steep point dropping into the channel, but there's enough of a flat spot on the top of it where these fish can kind of set up in the way that we had them set up on that last point. I want to see if we can see any more. Just graphing through here. I mean, it's kind of tough. We saw a fish kind of setting up there, but it's a little bit tricky to see them because they're just so tight to the bottom. Ooh, look at that. Okay, there we go. There's some fish right there. They're freaking all over that tree right there. Look at that. That's what we want to see. Oh my goodness, those are some nice bass right there off this point. So this point's got them, guys. So our little process definitely works. There's fish right here. There's fish right here. And oh no, someone's coming to put their boat in. Oh, that is bad timing, guys. Someone's literally about to put their boat in the ramp, but we're gonna fish here anyways. Hopefully it doesn't bother them too much because there are fish on this deal. There's just someone about to take out this ramp. That's a bummer. Okay, well hopefully this doesn't bother these fish too much. There's a boat putting in here, but I just graphed over them too, like twice. I doubt these fish are that bothered by it. It's table rock. They get run over all the time in the summer. So I'm just gonna fire that swim bait out, count it down for a few cranks and wind it in. There were some nice fish on that tree there. And they did drive right over the top of them again. So we've driven over the top of them like 4 times. So maybe not the best to get these fish to bite, but oh, it didn't matter. First cast on the swim bait, suspended in these trees, guys. Not a big one, but it's right on where we needed to find them. That's awesome. This fish did not get bothered by that. They just ate that little mega bass spark shad, 3-inch spark shad. Beautiful little spotted bass. Fishing that on the new Picasso ball head with the Sujin lock. It has a little piece of lead that locks in these small swim baits and balances the bait out, which is awesome. And it is perfect when you want to fish a heavier head, a 3/8 ounce head on these small 3-inch swim baits. We have the tush from Core Tackle, but it doesn't work great with these like little tiny spark shads in our heavier sizes, like the 1/4 ounce size. And a lot of these fish on Table Rock get pretty picky about the size of the bait. And this 2/0 3/8 ounce head is perfect for what I want to do right now. And so that's why I'm throwing that. And the tungsten makes it a little bit smaller, a little bit more compact profile. And first cast ate that thing, so it's pretty sweet. Old school swim bait fishing, I love it. So there's fish all over this point though. I know there's more up here too. Come on now. The wind's kind of blowing at my back, which is not the best angle for this, but I don't want to get around too much. Around this point too much, because I'll get in these guys' way when they're loading their boat. But let that bait fall down there. But that's 2 points in a row now. You're seeing us build the pattern, and this is the concept, guys. You build the pattern, you get out here, you figure out what types of points they're on, you focus on these smaller pockets and smaller creeks so you can develop the pattern faster. And now we've gone 2 points in a row that have a channel access, that have a flatter spot up top. It's exactly what we were talking about. These fish ate the swim bait. They were kind of suspended up, and I think we can probably catch one on a swing head here too. But let me kind of reposition the boat really fast. Either way, I also like to follow that 10-minute rule I've talked about for years, guys. If I fish a spot for more than 10 minutes and don't get a bite, then I move on. So that's what I'm gonna do here. And Honestly, I, again, don't feel like this is the best pattern going right now on Table Rock, but it is a way to break down these points, break down these lakes, and there is a time in the year when this can be a dynamite pattern. I've been in this part of the lake on this pattern before and caught 30, 40 fish a day. I think this is a dying pattern, so we're gonna fish the moment now, go run up the river. That's where my gut is telling me to go. I'm about to take the swing head off actually and put on a little Ozark rig and go flip some shallow laydowns and stuff and hopefully set the hook on some big largemouth. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Again, huge shout out to Bridgeford Foods for sponsoring this long form fish moment content. And other than that, we'll see you guys in the next video.